Hey Ryan, how's it going?
Not bad at all. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, and ready to jump back into it. Talk about AI again. So anyway, we were talking before we got going here, and we thought it might make sense to do a little bit of a review of what we chatted about last time. And so on the site, which if you haven't visited the site recently, you'll notice there's been a little bit of polishing, some upgrades to the interface here, and try to make it a little bit easier to find and sort things. You'll see at the top here, there's just some filters to be able to browse and discover things a little bit easier. We have added also in the resources, it's got a similar type of thing with the filters and all that. And I've got some stuff I need to add in here. I'll do that here after we're done because we're going to be talking about one of those here. But anyway, last week we chatted about Llama 4 that had just come out over the weekend. And so we gave that a little test drive and shared our experience there. And then we also jumped over into a couple different tools that we've discovered that help you compare models. I think both of us mentioned our cynicism around baselines and the fact that I think there's some drama around Llama 4 and its
There is, in
baselines that
fact,
just
some
came
drama
out.
around Llama 4 and maybe some other versions of Llama that were released as well. And just lineage, I think, is the main thing they're arguing about right now.
Yeah. But anyway, you could still compare different models pretty easily. And we found Llama, what was it? The Ella Marina
Right.
was the one that we looked at that was really a blind test. And we gave it the Molly Tuttle test, and it actually, both models came back correct. But at the end of the day, I chose one that we had never heard of before over DeepSeek R1. And I still haven't gone back to really look into that one, but that one was Lunar Call, was that?
I think it was, in fact, Lunar Call, all one word.
Yeah. So I know I've gone back and watched the video of last week, and we at the end of the video are both left speechless and a little dumbfounded on
Indeed.
on what was that lunar call. So anyway, fun, interesting stuff. But go back and watch that episode and get caught up on some of the things that we've been looking at. And we're definitely going to do more deeper dives into some of the stuff. In fact, Cursor is one that we've already looked at quite a bit. It's a tool that we're using internally. We've been given sort of the green light to experiment with different ways on how it can help us. And there's been a really interesting conversation going on in our internal team Slack channel that Ryan and I are part of that we thought we would bring up here as well because it's relevant to some of the things we've talked about. It's just relevant to really all of us in this new space experimenting with tools. And it's something we've talked about in the past. I think it was two weeks ago, talking about bringing in project requirement documentation about here's what I want you to do. Here's how I want you to do some things. Here's where you put in like guide rails of some structure about what you want
Right.
this thing to do. But in Cursor specifically, and I'm assuming it works in a lot of the other new IDEs.
Yeah, Cursor and WindSurf at least has
Yeah.
something similar.
Yeah. But you put in specific rules that say, and it's a config file, much like what we're used to seeing in other places. And you just define I shouldn't say it's a config file technically, but it's a file, markdown file, I think in most cases that describes what you want your project to do and how to behave and what are the rules. And it's becoming pretty clear, I think, in the community how important those are, but also even to the people who haven't realized how important they are, how much of a difference it makes using one versus
Absolutely.
not using one.
Yeah, no, what's interesting to me is, and sorry, I did like a cursory overview of WindSurf, but WindSurf has a few opinions. And one of those here, as opposed to Cursor, is that you shouldn't need the rules file, that the model should be able to intuit what's required from it, which is a great idea. In practice, though, I feel like you do need rules files, and Windsurf does support rules files for sure. But I feel like with either of these tools, without them, it's really difficult to not do. And in fact, it feels like the PRD that we're talking about is similar to, if not identical to, a rules file. The difference, I think, might be that the rules file could live both within your project as well as so outside of your project. So you could have a global rules file and then one for that project, which is very similar to a PRD. So instead of attaching the PRD context every time, you could put some of that stuff in the rules file and have it go through. And I feel like this is, again, I've only had a few co-ops and interns over my vast career, but it feels like one of those things that I suffered with when trying to give people tasks, is like things that I thought were givens or were understood weren't. And I needed to define those, or needed to define those a lot of time. And it feels like a return to that. That being said, one of the problems with some of these models is that context, or that the context window, I guess, when you get past it, it will forget some of the things that you've been talking about. If it's not in a rules file, when you go to start that new session again, it's like you have to re-explain everything all over again. So it makes sense actually for your end to write it down before you have to re-explain it multiple times, because that's what you have to do otherwise.
Yeah. That's the exact metaphor that they use in this blog post that I'm
Oh, right
going to
on,
share
right on.
about, they're calling it AI amnesia. And so just what you did is every time they come back, it's like they found themselves resharing some of the important details
Yeah.
that are unique to this project and how you want to put it together. And they found themselves repeating instructions. And you know what? One of the first things as a developer we do is we all hate repeating ourselves. So it's
DRY.
like
Don't
we
repeat
are
yourself.
going to attack that very quickly.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening here is people are realizing I don't have this, like defeats the whole point. In fact, one thing I want to say I've realized lately is the stuff that I'm using AI on are specifically when my like inner monologue says, I don't want to do that.
This sounds like toil.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. Like I don't want to do that, but I know it needs to get done or I should do it. So that's like perfect the space for me where I look for projects. But anyway, this article is really great.
I feel like we should dig on that a little bit. Maybe not today, but it does feel like if the thing you need to do is just get started in order to get a project done, this does feel like it's doing a lot of heavy lifting, and the just get me started kind of thing. It really does feel like a nice gentle push for me to like get in there and actually get the work done.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Yeah. And the other part about this article is it points out how obviously people that are using these rules are finding success and things are looking better, but it still takes time to build the rules file.
Yes.
And that feels like toil. And that's, again, it falls into that category of, man, I don't really want to do that.
And now I will say both of these, at least Cursor and WindSurf, do have repositories of rules that you can grab from. And then I think the person talking this morning was giving a shout out to Simon Wardley of Wardley Map fame, who also has a bunch of rules as well that are handy. It's interesting because Simon went into this whole exercise thinking this is going to be awful and was honestly not surprised. I think it was 2 years ago when they started and was not surprised that things actually were awful. But then realized that there was a little bit in here that was helpful. And as a result, started scratching away at it. And Simon's actually come up with some really good ideas as a result that helps. Simon Wardley or Wardley Maps is the blog. But yes, I would totally agree to check some of those rules out, as well as WindSurf and or the Cursor rules, because even though they're for one app or the other, they can apply to both. Yeah. As long as you look through it in order to make sure there's no like Codium or Cursor stuff in there. It's generally reusable across.
Yeah. And this blog post here, they go one step further. Like you said, there's repositories full of rules that you can go grab. This one even has a lot of sample stuff in here. But what their argument here is that why not let Cursor create all the rules for you every time you do a new project? Is you just interact with Cursor and say, pull in the rules that I use as a baseline everywhere, but then also per project, there's like the uniqueness of what's going on there. And why not let the models actually build those rules files for you too?
Totally agree. So, now, do you use ChatGPT's memory feature? Maybe you don't use ChatGPT for coding too much. I use it once in a while when I'm trying something quick.
Yeah, I haven't used it as much lately, and I haven't had time to come back and see how. I had heard the news that now it's got this really long and it's broadened its depth of not just like extending one particular chat conversation back further than it could. It's now knows all about all conversations.
It's got the concepts of workspaces, I think, as opposed to Claude's projects. I'm out on a limb here, but I believe that's the case, similar to like a Notion. The other thing, though, is that it doesn't have a rules functionality, but it does have the ability to memorize or memoize. So to write down little notes of things as you're going along. And it's interesting in that it will just add things in. So yesterday I was testing Claude versus Llama 4 versus some other stuff that I was doing on this Pi thing. And I was trying to figure out it maybe, because like there's maybe some rules over here that I can use in this one, basically, is what I was getting at. And it turned out that there was ways that I could say, hey, my lab has these processors, because we were really getting into the nitty gritty about processor capabilities. This lab has this processor, this GPU, that kind of thing. What extensions can I use? What I found was really interesting is that ChatGPT actually said, okay, adding to memory that fact. And it felt like to me that would be something that I would add to Cursor rules, or maybe as I was going through this, like I may need to prompt the memory. The other thing it did when I logged in was ask, like, hey, would you like me to describe you based on our previous chats? And they gave me the ick, I'll be honest, but I was like, let's figure out what that would be good. We'll start here. And it said that I was a DevRel engineer with a penchant for photography. But there was a lot more detail in there and a pretty bad pun. But I thought that was pretty interesting, is that there was a bunch of facts basically in that workspace like you're talking about that allowed it to come up with things that were maybe similar to what I put in a Cursor rules file if I wasn't just coding, basically, because I primarily use Cursor for coding and ChatGPT for maybe we'll call them soft skills kind of stuff. So outside of that. But it did feel like there's a feature disparity going on between the two, because I feel like Cursor rules are a lot easier to use than just telling and paying for ChatGPT requests to add it to memory kind of thing. It felt like that ergonomics was better for me. But it could be that because I'm more related to coding and or used to coding and config files, that's the practice that I want. But the memory thing I think might be good for most people who just want to add something, have it remember and move on kind of thing without having to bring up a text file and edit it.
Yeah. To me, it seems like just the natural evolution of these things. They're all
Right.
starting to converge on like
Exactly.
what just the baseline expectations are from your agent talking to different models. And I think where you see the developer community finding workarounds for the don't repeat yourself stuff, like MCP, I think is a good example.
Yep.
I think rules files and project requirement docs, like these are ways we as developers are finding solutions that solve like our first, like the main pain point that we have right now.
Right.
And I think the developers of the IDEs out there are going to acknowledge that's the next pain point of developers, and they're just going to integrate that into their IDE, or they should be. And so we'll just kind of see this happen over and over again. Everything that seems really tedious and hard to do, we find a solution for. Using rule files is a good example. And then somehow through just the evolution of personalization, our IDEs are going to be like the ChatGPT situation, where it just it knows all the projects we work on, it knows the language we like, it knows how we like to structure our stuff, and it's based on the projects that we've already done with it. And
I'm smiling over here because I feel like the dream of Emacs as an operating system is even closer if we can add AI into the mix. I can do everything. It can slice, it can dice, you can see your chat. But it does feel like the age of Emacs is upon us, where we can use it for everything. That's what I'm here for.
Anyways, the takeaway here is rules files are great. Use them, especially in Cursor. They've got like it set up, and it sounds like WindSurf, they've got it like set up to use specific, where they go.
Yep.
Like it's .cursor is like
.cursor rules, yep. And I think WindSurf is either similar or exactly the same. It's like WindSurf rules or something like that.
Yeah, so do that. The other thing we thought about talking about this week is Google Cloud Next was last week, but a lot of our colleagues were there speaking, and sounded like another great event. Sounds like it's gotten bigger again year over year. And
I heard 30,000. That's a pretty big event.
Yeah. So I had a great time when I was there last year, and actually I was speaking last year, and it dawned on me that the talk that I was giving, it was around the time that Gemini was first launching, and we being Datadog are partners with Google Cloud, and we worked with them to basically improve their models with regards to Datadog. And I went in and created 200 different prompts and responses, and just tried to help educate Gemini basically on how to use Datadog on a few very specific things, and then created a demo to show that how that works on stage. And anyway, it all came together. I was really stressed out, but it wasn't a big deal to help train Gemini on Datadog.
I do remember this, yes. It seemed like a busy period of your life.
Yeah. But anyway, we pulled it off. And so what I thought maybe we would do is I'm going to go back to share my screen again. Sure. And one of the things that was announced at GCN, Google Cloud Next, was Firebase Studio, which it's in preview here. And if you're familiar with sort of the Google Cloud ecosystem, there's Firebase, and you can create Firebase projects. And then Firebase Studio is, I guess, for lack of a simpler way to describe it, it's much like some of the other IDEs. It's cloud-based though. And as you can see here, we can start things off by just giving it some ideas, picking from some suggestions, or also maybe importing a repo, or it looks like also just starting from a scratch thing here. So anyway, Ryan, what do you know about Firebase Studio before we like give it some code and see what the thing can do?
Rapidly Googling in the background to figure out what some of these icons, even just for the apps that you've got under are. But
what are these?
So I think I know all of them except for that blue star looking one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that Dash?
Zoom in a little bit on these here.
No worries.
Start with Go.
So I know about Firebase itself is like an easy way to allow database synchronization. Yeah, what's the one just to the left of GenKit? Gemini API. Okay, here we go. Yeah, it was Gemini. My apologies. Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Gemini, okay.
So I know a little bit about Firebase itself in terms of authentication and synchronization of databases. It solved problems that, at least at Samsung, we had that were pretty hard, such as you're on your phone, you go into the elevator, you continue working on a documentation. Do you sync it back to the server or somebody else is working on it? What do you do? That kind of stuff. So it solves for some of these issues, which are non-trivial, actually. It's quite difficult. Firebase Studio, as far as I could tell, seems to be a response to something like maybe like a Bolt or one of these apps that can not one shot, but one or two shot kind of app builder things. Is that what it is, or is it different?
No, I think that's pretty close. Definitely uses Gemini on the back end,
Gotcha.
some of the latest Gemini models. And yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. A lot of them lately, and I've got Bold open in another tab too, because we thought about talking about that. You can tell right away from the interface, like it's got the same just empty box of.
Yeah, you know what I really like about both of these, and it may not apply to everybody, but I love those the little prompts that are at the bottom that you can click, those little pills that are like ready for you to go. I think that's awesome because it shows you what it can do.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know it could import from Figma, for example.
Oh yeah.
And it gets you started really quickly. And I will often click on these buttons just because I assume that they should work. And sometimes you get stuck. Now, I've used Bolt a little bit here, so I think I've clicked on a few of these. But the one in Google, I think, was like what was it? Tip calculator was one of the examples.
Yeah, tipping calculator,
which I thought was interesting. But ERP dashboard and expense tracker are two
sounds...
examples that that's pretty enterprising.
Totally.
If you're putting this in front of millions of users, these last two, at least to me, feel like they're trying to tell business that, hey, this tool can be used for some of your business stuff. Because over at Bolt, I don't think there's anything close to this. Bolt will talk more about like libraries and things like that, just to let you know the capabilities. But it doesn't say, okay, let's create, I don't know, assuming with Looker, but maybe it's not an ERP dashboard or expense tracker or what have you.
I can tell you there is a lot of complexity that goes into ERPs. So whatever.
Exactly. Sorry. It sounds like you have similar shared trauma as I do.
Yeah.
But like ERPs are not fun to play with.
No. But if we're just talking about dashboard, that could be pretty easy. If it's
fair enough. Yeah. Something in D3 maybe.
JSON, but
right.
It's a far cry from the code that I was going to give it. I was going to give it my Doggos demo from GCN last year and just see if there's any way to modernize it.
Yeah. Are you able to like import? I see a button.
So
there.
yeah, it looks like down here we can import repo.
Okay.
Let's go grab the code base here. Okay. It's just a little bit easier.
Yeah, I did notice Flutter a couple times. Like I generally don't hear a lot about Flutter. So I think Flutter comes out of Google is why I find that funny. And I thought the other icon might be Dash because I just don't hear a lot about Dash. And I know it's a Google thing.
It's not a Flutter app. So I don't want it to be. I don't think
right.
so.
Yeah, so I don't think you want to check that.
Leave that home. Now, I guess we can give a quick demo on what this app does.
Yeah, let's do it.
All it is, it talks to like, there's an API out there that has pictures for like all the dog breeds. Probably not all the dog breeds, but a lot of them. Ryan, I know you're a big fan of pugs.
So I do have two. I also used to have a Shiba Inu, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Okay. Shiba Inu's in here too.
Those ones, pugs don't.
Let's start with Shibas.
Shelters as much as Shibas, unfortunately, they're hard dogs to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you had a Shiba before too.
I did have, yeah. He was a part Shiba.
Very,
yeah, very fox-like too.
Yes, absolutely.
So anyway, all this app did, it's pretty.
This is tugging on my heartstrings already. Just help these poor dogs. This one that's dressed as a jester, obviously, needs to come home with me.
Yeah, and I think just refreshing it. Oh no, it doesn't. But the dogs aren't really the Malamute.
Oh, those are nice dogs. Yeah,
some dogs here. But the point of this app wasn't for the dogs per se, but more that if you look at the code, I'm guessing, you could probably see it.
It's probably in that body. It's probably a meaty.
Yeah. Or maybe I put it in the script file.
Oh, yeah. It looks like you might have. There's not too much in here other than layout, so it looks like the script has most of it.
And I forget how to get over there.
Right there. You got it. Yeah. Sources, and then click on the script. Yeah.
So, yeah, you can see I've added some things in here around sending logs to Datadog, as well as, I believe I added some RUM, which is our real user monitoring.
Yep.
It might not be in this deployment. I don't see it. No, but it's got all the logs. So anyway, long story short, what the demo was is at the beginning, this app did not have any kind of instrumentation whatsoever.
Right.
And by the end of the demo, we had talked to Jim and I had said, here's what I want to do. I want to put some logging and everything into my app. And it gave me a step-by-step on like how to accomplish that. So that was the mission of that. But this is a pretty, as you can see, pretty basic app and not my proudest work visually, but it got the message across. So let's go back over into Firebase Studio. Do I want to create an IDX config file?
It feels like yes is what you want here, but the Nix call out I thought was pretty interesting to me. I feel like you want to ask later.
Okay.
I don't think you're using Nix, are you?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. This is my project, and we've got Gemini in here.
Interesting.
And the built-in Gemini model, which is Pro Experimental 325.
Really? Nice.
Okay. Oh, I might need my API key, though.
Gotcha.
Okay. I don't have, per se, API key to use, so maybe we want to use a different model.
Does it have other than Gemini models, I wonder? Oh, I see.
Maybe if you know the ID, but probably still only
Gotcha.
use your own Gemini API key for experimental. I guess I could try to create a key real quick.
Yeah, we can close our eyes here. We can mask this later.
Yeah, I suppose. Let me just drag it out of the review.
Yeah, exactly. We're going into secure mode here, folks. One of the things I noticed a lot of these tools is that they ask for API keys back and forth. And some of these tools, like Gemini Studio, feel like they're geared towards a home user as well as people like us who are messing around or even engineers or scientists. But it doesn't necessarily tell you like where to put your API key or how to handle your API key or some best practices. Maybe shove it in the M file and add that to git ignore, those kind of things aren't necessarily like there for you. And in this case, I would hope at least that when you paste it in, it comes in as those numbers so you can't read it kind of thing. But in a lot of cases, when I'm dealing with these UIs, they don't even have that. So it's like your API key, which is usually something like your Anthropic or maybe your OpenAI API key is actually pretty important. It can cost you a lot of money if you lose it. I've lost a Supabase one I think I talked about last time because I didn't realize how in the front end, how to obfuscate it or maybe use jaw tokens instead. So I wasn't doing any of that. And as a result, I was just exposing it on the web. But anyway, this I think is going to be a problem going into the future is educating users about API keys and how to use them.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing you need, and key management and I think cost management, me just keeping tracks of all the different
security
keys,
secrets management. Yeah, all of that stuff. It's pushing you. If you're no longer writing code, and let's be charitable here, let's assume that all this is working, then you need to concentrate on the other side of things, so the more senior sort of governance stuff that's important. So the security, the versions, the licensing, all that stuff comes into play.
Right. Yeah. All right. I'll share my screen again here. I've got my key and I think I've added it in. It wasn't there was no like save button or anything.
Perfect. That's cool though. So maybe Google's getting at the, no save.
Perhaps. Yeah, I guess we'll see. I don't know. I've got my key over here in another screen if I need to copy and paste it somewhere again, but
So one of my favorites, if you don't mind, is to ask it, what does this, do you think it would handle that or explain this to me like I'm 5? Those are my favorites, especially because I'm dealing with TypeScript a lot of time and I legit have no idea what I'm doing.
Just what does this project do?
What does it do? Yeah, what is going on?
Let me just double check what model we're on. Okay.
Yeah, it says it's using the built-in one, but yeah, I feel like this is really good. The Gemini 2.5 Pro, I've not yet to test it, but it's like top of that LM leaderboard for sure.
All right, let's see if it liked my keys or my key that I gave it.
And I'm not sure if you knew, but that lunar call apparently came from Google. They're just not sure which model it is, which is...
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Oh, that was fast. There we go. Okay.
Okay, what's it say here? Okay, I'll read the README file. It makes sense. And the index file.
Okay, so it doesn't know what the dog API is, which was fair because we didn't... Yeah, there's no markup for that. But it says the dog.ceo API.
I want to say where is the... Yeah, that's actually the right URL for the API. So even though it looks, is that what you were pointing out? It just doesn't look like that.
It just calls it the quote unquote dog API because it doesn't know what it's serving.
Oh, I see.
Which
and
is
also,
fine.
Yeah. And also it's not dog-API. It's just API.
Oh, I messed up.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. You can run locally. Yeah. And a lot of that was in the README, really.
Yeah, it didn't go too far into it. Yeah.
Dig into, I told you Oops, I have it here.
And what's your license? Because a lot of times I feel like it's not.
Here.
Oh, I think you can hit the split there on the top.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, yeah, and then drag that over.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
it feels like these are all this VS Code or Code Server
Yeah,
UI.
I've never had when I open something up that it like launches it on the right hand side.
Yeah, it's odd.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. So the README tells you half of what it told us, so that wasn't really all that impressive. What do you think the next thing we should do? See if we can like.
Okay, so listen, Jason, your UI is pretty good, but one thing that I found the accessibility thing is that I feel like it shouldn't be grayed out when I'm looking at the dogs. I should be able to see the photo without mousing over, and it should be the opposite interaction. Do you agree? Not agree? Maybe this is designed by Camel or something like that.
I agree that you do not like my artistic decision.
I'm so sorry. Everyone's a hater, right?
Absolutely.
I don't mean to call your baby ugly.
I wanted to have some kind of hover effect, but yeah, this is where we landed. And like I said, the interface wasn't the priority. But I would agree with that. It's not the prettiest thing, so maybe.
But a lot of my questions, I guess, is what I'm getting at, is more around accessibility. So it's like and I want to ask like a novel question because I feel like LLMs are pretty good at finding novelty. But it's like, what's the one big change that I can make to address accessibility? What's the one big change I can make to address to security or what have you? It's like those, I don't know, those types of prompts are the ones that I try for. Like, what's the easiest thing I can do that has the biggest change? Is the business world kind of equivalent? I don't know if you've ever had a manager like that. I've had a couple now. What's the easiest way you can fix it, and how do you do it?
How specific do we want to be here?
It's up to you. Like I said, accessibility, I said security. I tend to make it pretty vague just to see if it understands the product. Yeah. Because there are a lot of accessibility guidelines. It's not that easy.
Okay. Let's see what it says.
Interesting. Okay. I would say that this window, one thing I'm noticing of a lot of these editors is they're made for a pretty big screen res, and I don't think we can see what's going on. Yeah, as a result.
That helps.
It wants you to fix your SEO. That's a very Google answer.
I'm not sure that has a lot to do with accessibility per se, although improving the accessibility should improve the SEO, maybe. Okay, so it's got some update suggestions.
Interesting.
Let's start from the top. Okay, so first thing it wants to do is improve screen reader readability.
That's a non-trivial, like describing the images is non-trivial. So it's like one of those tasks where you could probably layer AI on top of this again to describe the images for this, because this is manual. Otherwise, it's not simple.
On that image, the golden retriever puppy, that's coming in from an API randomly. We'd have to identify it
exactly as it comes through. Yeah.
Image loading errors. Okay. I don't know if I've ever had an image not load.
I think you've only had, at least if I've seen this app before, it's where there is no image, I think is the issue. It's not the image loading, it's that there's no image of the puppy for adoption. Is that the case?
I don't know. I feel maybe there's a breed or two that just didn't have enough dogs that didn't populate. Like it usually, I think, displays 3.
Gotcha.
But honestly, it's been so long since I've looked at the code, I don't recall.
Fair enough.
But anyway, not a huge problem. But I guess in terms of accessibility, like if there's going to be an error, that it should be able to handle that.
Yeah. And this third one, to me at least, describes a site that already has like a list of dogs, and then going through and saying the alt tags would make sense. And I've seen this in adoption sites, that kind of thing. You can have a featured area, but the featured area can be, and this is more about the business problem. If you have a featured area, then that means that people will be interested in those dogs and they may not search. So I feel like the way you set it up already is better, but the way they're talking about setting up SEO would require a search to have been done in order to get the image up, to have the alt tag to then be crawled, which is not really the way the site works. Mm-hmm. So it's like a misunderstanding of the functionality of the site.
What's funny, look here, it says, good news, looking at the script file, it seems the project already implemented what I initially suggested, which is exactly what you just said. So,
yeah. All right. Okay. So
did it not analyze it the first time around?
Yeah, I feel like it didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. But
okay, and then it did though. Okay, so add a label. Okay. Okay. All right. So there's like a categorization or some metadata to the alt tag. Okay.
You're right to focus on accessibility after Yeah.
Now, my worry here is that a lot of these assumptions are based on not being able to quote unquote see the web page, which is where some of these multimodal app gens actually do shine. So, like a Bolt, for example, if it makes a bad app and you take a screenshot and then paste it back in and say, hey, this looks like garbage. No, this is lined up. It's all over the place. Oh, shoot, you're right. Like it looks bad. I wonder if you're able to take a screenshot and point that, paste it in here and say, hey, this is what it actually looks like. Are you sure this is correct? That kind of thing.
That's a good question. I can add an attachment.
Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, it does take images. All right.
Images are one of those. So
Because at least in Bolt, like that's a big deal because Bolt does a lot of UI stuff. I've noticed in some of these apps, Cursor's another one, where you're doing UI things, it feels like you need to show, quote unquote, show the model what things look like, what the result is, that kind of thing.
YOLO, we're going to do it.
YOLO mode. All right.
We'll see.
Now, the other thing I'm seeing here is that your icon is in there. Is this a multi-user chat?
Are you referring to my Google account?
Yeah, in your chat, as you're typing, it's got your icon, which makes me think it needs to differentiate between people. Put a pin in that, but I wonder if this is multi-user. I can find it.
Okay. Give me a chance here to review the changes. I don't know what's going on there.
All right.
This is one of those low impact projects anyway. It doesn't matter if something really goes sideways with it.
Yeah, and I think you've got like a local clone of it. So it's brought it down from GitHub. It's not pushing it back or anything like that.
Yeah, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we're done here.
Now, can it run it locally? Would be like the other sort of thing that a lot of these, like a replit, I started off with,
Yeah.
but I wonder if I can run it.
I see a terminal.
Yeah, there is a terminal.
Is there a terminal? It is. Okay.
I think you can just do, is it main.py?
Yeah, I keep it right here in.
Look at that.
Oops, I thought it did. Right here. Just for this reason. Copy and paste.
Perfect.
Oh, I don't allow it.
Right. Clipboard access in a browser.
Oh.
So there's a couple things disjointed here. So it started it, but like, how do you see it? Which is interesting to me.
That's true because, yeah, my mind went straight to, I'm just going to go localhost, but there's actually going to be an IP address.
Yeah, yeah. So I wonder, is there like a preview? If you type in the chat, are you able to run this app as a preview?
Yeah, that's a good question. We did this before.
Yes, in fact, it feels like in this industry, we do a lot of things over and over again, back to the DIY kind of stuff. But I do wonder if it's got like an app runner. Okay. I mean, okay. So yeah, locally, if you grab this locally, you could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does Firebase have previews?
We'll just cancel this. And I will open up terminal.
Okay. It does have a preview. Oh, it is Nix, in fact. Okay. So it is using Nix. So it did need that dev.nix thing to actually allow hot reload and stuff like that. Interesting. My apologies. I'm just reading through the
And I haven't actually synced this repo down.
I think that's fine.
Maybe we've ruined this one.
No, I think this is actually pretty good. So I think when we started up, one of the questions was, would you like to create like a dev.nix definition?
Yeah.
And just going through the docs, it looks like that's what you want. And then a quote unquote prod definition might be where you push out the Firebase app to something that's hosted. I would assume that this is just the Nix, was it like the package manager? Nix is a microkernel, if I recall correctly, like it's an operating system plus package manager. It could be what they're using on their backend, which is actually pretty interesting. But so if you start with one of their template apps, it will set that up for you automatically. And I think because you imported from another one, that's why it asked you that question when you got in there. But this is, honestly, it feels like you didn't demo much, but this is actually really cool because if you're in the Google Cloud side, you don't want to be using any other. This is what you want to use. And I feel like on the Azure side, they've got Azure AI Studio, which is similar, but it's not as good as this at all. It's clunky. No offense to Microsoft. I realize this is brand new. On the Amazon side, I think they do have an AI workspace thing that I've not played with. I'm not sure if you have. It's like Bedrock
I have not.
Workspaces, something like that. Or maybe it's Q Developer Workspaces. Yeah, Amazon Bedrock Studio Workspace. And I think it uses Q Developer to do it. Very similar to Code 9 back in the day, if that rings a bell from Amazon. They had a web-based IDE. That's the era that we're getting into. It looks like VS Code on the web is the thing.
And I think that's fine because on the surface, it's a lot of the same functionality across all of them, and then still very customizable to make it your own and like to do everything you want. You want to make it like Emacs? You can do that.
Absolutely, I do. Are you kidding? The other thing is, so you were talking about training the Gemini model for Datadog, et cetera, et cetera. And listen, that's where we work, no problem. But there are built-in monitoring things within these clouds. And I wonder if setting up something like a Stackdriver in Google, or maybe like a CloudWatch in Amazon, or what was the guy? Azure has log workspaces or log analytics workspaces. That kind of stuff is actually non-trivial within these clouds as well, especially if you're a beginner. And I wonder if they're working on adding that kind of stuff in there. And obviously, as a third-party vendor for monitoring, we'd love to be in there too. But it feels to me like the next step after pushing your app out, at least in my brain, is like monitoring. How many people are hitting the site, that kind of stuff. That's what I want to know next. Like, how is it doing? Are there security problems? There's a bunch of questions I would have. Maybe you get the security later when it goes down, but it feels like that next step is there. So I wonder what differentiates between the providers' models that they're giving you by default and what their knowledge is about their own platform. I definitely want to kick the tires more, is all I'm trying to say.
So before we got on the recording, went in, and in order to set up the Firebase Studio, the code IDE, I had to create a new project within Firebase and within Google.
That's a billing API, right? For Google is how that works. Projects each have a credit card associated with them, I think.
Don't know if there's a credit card per project, but you can create multiple projects. So I created one.
I think that's the same one. I've got one hosted on Google Cloud as well. Yeah.
Okay. So you will need to link your studio to a project or create a new project.
That makes sense.
Created one from scratch. So anyway, there is that that process there. And then I'm assuming whatever resources you may use, I guess. And we were just using a terminal, and we didn't really dig into what did he give us.
You're blowing my mind though. Like I do actually use Google Apps, and I do actually have a project already. So I wonder if I could create because I can do blue-green basically in Google Apps, which is nice. I wonder if I can create like a different version of my website and play around with it.
Yeah.
Instead of starting new, listen, no offense to the ones that are like zero shot, let's create a whole new app. But I think what you showed me at least is like, here's a dirty app that I'm currently working on, or one that I've put a pin in. It's version 1, but I want to make it version 2. What's my next step kind of thing? Again, like that app I'm talking about on Google Apps, I feel like I deployed it 15 years ago as a read-only WordPress kind of template, and it definitely is aging.
Here's the thing I'm noticing. Beginning of this conversation, we talked about the importance of rules, like cursor rules. There's no real like thing about rules here.
I didn't see any. No.
And so we've already said that's a super important thing is to have those rules in place. And or have that project requirement doc. Except all of the tools are giving me like what to do next. They're with like a button. And it's almost like one of those don't press buttons. I know I shouldn't press this until I have my rules in place and my project requirement docs and whatever, but like they've already presented me with the button to like just build the thing. And part of me is just the crash test dummy in me and let's just see what happens.
Click all the buttons.
And others is like, I've done this enough to know what happens sometimes, and it's not great. So anyway, I don't know, just something I thought about today is like, how easy we're making it for us to just skip over this step that we've all determined is actually very important.
Yes.
And I wonder if there'll be another addressing that somewhere. Is, hey, before you hit go, do you want to put in some rules first? Just want to check.
Is your system prompt okay? So I just quickly browsed through their docs, and it looks like it's mostly about prompting or system prompting or prompt engineering, basically, is what they're recommending. But totally agree. Like, I'd like to change the system prompt for this whole thing. Like, every time you send this off to the model, make sure you include this bit. That's not part of this design. So this is like I don't want to say a naive, but this is like a first process. Yeah, exactly. It's a preview. It's not a beta, but it's in preview. People are starting to use it. But I do feel like rules are critical. I know that ChatGPT is trying to intuit them, and WindSurf says they don't need them. They've got context. But we've been able to prove, I think, the rules are requirements. Or you add them to your system prompt, and might as well just give me a UI for that anyway.
it's nice of these providers to give us 10 million tokens for context, but I don't see them scavenging through all those tokens to understand context any better than just giving them a list of things that we care.
Yeah, and I don't see any MCP in here either. Just looking through, maybe I'm missing it, but yeah, there's not much in there.
Oh.
The other is we just mentioned monitoring just a little bit, so they do have things in here for monitoring.
That was the other thing I meant to say. Because I had to create a project or link it to a project, I then had Google Analytics. In fact, it gave me a little checkbox that says, do you want to enable Google Analytics for this project? And I didn't even really think much about it, but that's the monitoring aspect.
Yeah.
And my project has its own Datadog.
Of course.
To it, but
of course. It looks like they're recommending Jenkit is actually the monitor. So I've not heard of Jenkit before. We did see it as one of the little icons in there. So maybe that's worth looking at, but I've not heard of it before. So we'll have to add that to our list of stuff to look at. It's an open source TypeScript toolkit designed to help you build AI-powered features in web and mobile apps. All right. It sounds to me like right up my kind of Gradio alley. So I'm definitely interested.
Yeah. All right. We should probably wrap up.
Shoot, yeah, we're over.
Episode. We are running a little long, but we've covered a lot of stuff.
Indeed.
And anyway, it was good to chat with you again. And I think next time we're going to try to have a little bit more of a discussion around Bolt. We just touched on that. We've had questions around Bolt, also had questions around MCP, which we touched on. So we've got definitely some other topics that we want to dive into soon. So we'll be back again
next time. I've signed for Bolt, and I've signed up for Supabase, and I've got to get projects. So I could probably show you what not to do, because I've definitely made some broken apps in Bolt. But I'll see if I can make one that's all singing and dancing and actually works. But
does it involve pugs?
It should involve pugs. It does not. I do have some other examples of pugs, but I've been generating realistic pug images in, I don't even know what they call it now.
No,
DALL-E in ChatGPT. It's surprisingly realistic. So I'm not going to say if your adoption pet doesn't have an image, generate one. I'm not going to go that far. But I'm impressed with the new image generation from ChatGPT.
Yeah, I've played around with it too, and it's been better than any of the other ones, which is, I guess, the main thing. And with text is the main.
Yes, they can actually put text. They can make memes now, finally. It's a low bar.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, it was good chatting with you, and we'll see you again on the next one.
Awesome. Thanks so much.